Welcome back to Succeed with Dyslexia. In this series, we discuss news and topics that go on in the dyslexia community. So make sure you like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Here's what you can expect from this episode. A highlight video all about our Dyslexia Me campaign, which does feature many of the interviews within this episode. We'll hear from Bosher and all about his mental health journey. Afterwards, our team member Donna will share with us some news from within the world of dyslexia. Following this, we'll be joined by author Margaret Rooke, and we'll hear all about the power that labeling has in our lives. Lastly, we'll hear from Dr. Helen Ross, who joins us to talk about the benefits of well-equipped teaching and how important it is to develop the right learning support skill sets. June saw us extend our new mental health campaign, Dyslexia Me, for an additional month, because we're still having the most amazing conversations all about how dyslexia can impact on emotional well-being and what the dyslexia journey means to all of you out there. We wanted to tell these incredible stories even though Mental Health Awareness Month is over. So stick around for our Succeed with Dyslexia exclusive interviews with Bosher of Thriiver, the author of Dyslexia is My Superpower most of the time, Margaret Rooke, and founder of Helen's Place, Dr. Helen Ross. Here's a summary of the journey we've been on over the past 2 months. We pledged to raise awareness about dyslexia and your mental health in our new campaign, Dyslexia and Me. And what a journey we've been on. We asked for your support to share and inspire others, and we were overwhelmed to see how many of you got involved and helped us be your voice in the community. It was inspiring to hear Amit share his poem and read about Ray Stain's dyslexia story. We loved seeing so many of you in the dyslexia community showing your support by sharing your photos holding the Dyslexia and Me sign. We were excited to join our Mel from the Girls with Dyslexia on Unmasking Day, as well as hear from several personalities in the dyslexia community discussing how their understanding of dyslexia allowed them to be a team. We hope that you were as inspired as we were as we heard stories from Dr. Neil Alexander Pass and enjoyed the journey with Jo Fallows as she talked to us about green therapy in beautiful Shropshire Hills. And looking towards the workplace, we welcomed Bosher and Jamie English as we discussed access to work and strategies that can make your workload manageable. Here at Succeed with Dyslexia, we felt that we couldn't not talk about the effects of dyslexia on our mental health this Mental Health Awareness Month. And what a journey these weeks have been. And we'll see you for Dyslexia and Me next year. We had the opportunity to speak with Bosher of neurodiverse specialists Thriiver and all about his personal mental health journey. Chris is a passionate advocate for neurodiversity and mental health provision in the workplace, and he took the time out of his day to chat with us all about his own experiences, masking, finding the drive to seek help, and how it takes people working together to believe in the cause and foster better mental well-being for all.
If you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit about your experience and your journey.
Yeah, well, I suppose I started feeling the effects of mental health 8 to 9 years ago.
Okay.
And it started off just low moods, getting agitated quite quickly and sort of really shying away from different things. And I just put it down to general stress, anxiety, just ways of life. It gets busy, it affects you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I put it down to that, thought nothing of it. So I carried on with life as normal. Until it progressively started getting worse, started deteriorating, where I used to just cry for absolutely no reason, uncontrollable crying. I used to stop going out, I used to ignore phone calls from friends because I couldn't face going out. It hit the stage where I'm mentally beating myself up, can't cope with the thoughts going through my head. And then just making any excuse not to see any friends or family.
And that was was it kind of like a build-up effect then? Because I guess at the start there was obviously something that was, maybe it was going on, kind of in your work life or something, and this kind of build-up thinking, I've got everything, I'm controlling it or keeping the lid on this, so to speak. And then, as you mentioned, it was almost at kind of like a boiling point where you're then thinking, I almost can't keep this in, I can't control it. Was that kind of the feeling?
That's it, it's like a pressure cooker, and I explain that. Well, in fact, it's like, to me, I see it as a balloon. It started off, right, okay, just low moods, where you get over it, and it did. It went, came back. Every time it came back stronger. So that balloon was getting bigger. And then it hit the stage where it's going to burst. and I need to do something. I don't really get it. I don't want to admit it because that's what we don't do we? Family, like fathers, role models, husbands, men in general, we don't open up to feelings, no, we hide it and we can fight it,
Because there's a certain, I guess, we mentioned before, kind of the ego or the responsibility, I guess, that we have to, fit into, all parents and kind of, get in your workplace as well. There's a certain status, I guess, that we have to fulfill.
I think that it's just years and years and years of, blokes don't cry, men can't show their feelings. And it's sort of engrossed to you, like as a kid, oh, man up, get up, you're right. And it sticks with you, not meant to. But I think now there's more awareness. There's still a long, long way to go. But I think it's essential that you talk up, you do cry, you do ask for help, you don't get ashamed, because the hardest part with what I found mental health was hiding behind a happy mask, and inside I was sort of crying for help, and I didn't get what I wanted to do. And the last thing you think of is mental health. Yeah. It just won't affect me.
Absolutely. And Chris, what was the kind of the day-to-day, if you don't mind sharing, the day-to-day kind of life for you, in the sense kind of maybe, taking, when you wake up in the morning and then going to work, what was that kind of, did it start the minute you woke up? Were you not getting sleep? What was?
It's a mixture of everything, really. So for me, work was a release. It kept my mind busy. I could take my mind off of that, the constant arguing in my head, constant fighting in my head. So I used to throw myself fully into work, and that was really, but where mine really caught up was at night time. When all of a sudden there's nothing else to do, you're just lying there with the thoughts, your own thoughts, then the battle starts in your mind, and then then you can't sleep because you're worrying, then you're over worrying, then you're worrying about not worrying, then it escalates, and what did I say that? I look stupid, or why am I feeling like this? I'm weak. You generally just beat yourself up.
So with regards to kind of, and I think there is, I don't know the correct terminology, but there is, scientific proof, and they say that some people, during the winter with the hours that change, it starts getting, in the UK, it starts getting dark at kind of 4 o'clock. We crave the summer. But in the winter, I can speak from personally, that time when it used to get dark, it's sort of 4 o'clock. Those are quite, tough times to kind of get through, because it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's quite dark. You almost assemble that to kind of nighttime. Were you did the darkness, or was it just the fact that it got to kind of night time that you started feeling a bit anxious because of the next day ahead, or was it?
I think with me, what I've learned, one of the coping mechanisms I have, and I think it's always been there without knowing, is being outside. As you said, in the summer or a nice sunny day, you naturally feel better. Yeah. You can sit in the garden, you're not going to work in the dark, coming back in the dark, then everything, there's nothing to look forward to. I think just being able to go outside and small things like listen to the birds sings, or lose yourself looking at a tree, trying to live back in the moment, because that's what I personally struggle with my mental health when it comes, is just not living in the moment and worrying. But being outside allows you just a couple of releases. And
you're absolutely right. It is that kind of centering yourself and trying to live in the moment. And I guess, one of the things that you mentioned was you're always thinking about, you're always worrying at that time, thinking, I'm going to stop myself from going to social situations. What does, my work colleagues, what do they think? What does that think? What was that kind of, what was kind of going on in that kind of, that time, if you don't mind sharing?
No, that's fine. I think you used to look at your phone and think, please don't ring. For me, it was, I can't show weakness. I can't show I'm weak. I've got to be the provider. It's embarrassing, how comes everyone around me is okay and I'm not? So it used to be, right, throw yourself into work, hide behind what I call a happy mask, which to everyone else around me, he's like, oh, he's fine, he's outgoing, he's happy. Inside, it was like, just get me out of this situation, but I keep smiling through it. And it was just very strange trying to even understand. You can't even explain it. You can't even explain how you feel. You don't even understand yourself. So it's very.
So with regards to kind of who you were, who did you kind of have to kind of, is your release, is in kind of, to be able to speak to about these matters? Because again, what you've alluded to, and rightly so, we hear this so many times, that people feel that they can't speak to someone because, because there's, it alludes to kind of, a dent in your ego or judgment or, what people might think of you. And if we take a work environment as well, it could be, does this then stop me from getting a promotion? Or do they think that I need special treatment and all these things? So what was the kind of the outlet for you to be able to, to communicate some of the issues that you were, some of the feelings, that you were feeling? Yeah,
no, I think to be honest, a lot of it was bottling. How I used to try and control it was I used to wait for everyone to go to sleep and just sit downstairs, hysterical crying, out of control crying. But obviously after a while, without you realising, family members, so my wife picked up on what's wrong. Something's not right. You're acting differently. You're agitated, or you're pulling away, or all these things I didn't think was obvious, but obviously is. And it was through my wife kept saying, something's wrong, what's up? And I kept trying to say, I'm tired, it's just things are getting me down. I've got a lot going on. But she physically made me see a doctor in the end. Very highly resistance of, I don't need to see a doctor. I'm fine. Okay.
And what was that stage like? I guess, as you mentioned, wasn't it? The first thing is you need to go and see a doctor.
Yeah.
And I guess it comes down to when admitting that there is something that you need support with. Yeah. And I guess you had to go through that kind of stage first of all.
It's, you overplay it in your head. Yeah. You overplay it, I'm failing. If I go and say, I don't need it. And you find any excuse not to see a doctor. When deep down, you do know, you know you need to, because you worry about your career, how people think about you, what's going to happen. I don't want to go on medication, I don't do this, I don't do that. Because again, all this stigma. But I think in the end, you're back to this corner, but I have to. And now it's out in the open, I'm struggling to hold these feelings in.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to hand it over to Donna to share with us some interesting facts within the world of dyslexia.
In the UK, Elizabeth Wilkinson of the Dyslexic Dyslexia Consultancy has been awarded an MBE in the Queen's Birthday Honours for the Platinum Jubilee. Elizabeth found out she had dyslexia in her early 30s and has dedicated her career to raising the profile of dyslexia with awareness days, awards, as well as her ongoing consultancy work. And sticking with the UK, but looking to politics this time, Matt Hancock MP's proposed dyslexia screening and teacher training bill has passed its first hurdle. The proposition of the bill is that every child in primary schools across the country should receive a dyslexia screening in the future, making it easier for them to get the support that they need to read and achieve. The bill was introduced to the House of Commons mid-June and has secured its second reading date on the 18th of September, which marks the next stage of the process, where there will be a full debate on the bill and how it can be implemented. We'll be bringing you more on this story as it happens.
In this next Succeed with Dyslexia exclusive, Darren Clark speaks with author Margaret Rooke, all about dyslexia and the power that labeling has in our lives, and how learning is a holistic experience that happens everywhere, not just in the classroom. We'll be talking about the differences between achieving with dyslexia and achieving because of dyslexia, how to thrive and build with dyslexia as a part of your life, and how fitting in to the dyslexia community comes in all shapes and sizes.
So Margaret, you are the author, one of the authors of Dyslexia is My Superpower. And I also love the fact that you've put in brackets most of the time. So Margaret, firstly, a massive thank you for taking time out of your busy day to speak with us. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you're doing.
Thanks so much for having me. Yes, I'm a writer, and I started writing about dyslexia about 7 years ago when my daughter was diagnosed with dyslexia. And I wanted to make sure that what she, having sort of this label that she'd suddenly been given, didn't make her think, and didn't make others like her think, that they couldn't achieve whatever they wanted in life. So I started interviewing very successful people with dyslexia to find out how they managed to achieve despite being dyslexic. And what I also found out during the interviews was that they had achieved because they were dyslexic as well, that they had attributes that at the time I hadn't been aware of, that their minds worked differently than is sort of generally required by the school system, but these attributes they had actually could really help them in their life after school.
Yeah. And you mentioned about, I mean, you've spoken, interviewed some really incredible people, and one of the attributes you mentioned is that we think of dyslexia as ultimately is something that's going to hold you back, or it's going to be a struggle, and that mindset around dyslexia is going to be reading and writing, and we know that as a whole there are so many different attributes that that make up someone with dyslexia, but I just want to kind of mention one of the valid points you said was they thrive despite their dyslexia because of their dyslexia. And I know you've spoken to some incredible people regarding that.
Yes, absolutely. So, what was fantastic for me was that some of the people I interviewed, my daughter knew about through the education system. So she did photography at GCSE. And David Bailey, for instance, the very famous photographer, was one of the people in the book. And there was Zoe Wanamaker, who was in the Harry Potter films. Okay. So there were people that she knew about, which made it more accessible, really. I'm not saying she read it, but she did. She did listen to the lessons that I learned when I was researching the book.
Yeah.
One of which I thought was extraordinarily powerful, was that all these people from all these different backgrounds were telling me that one important thing that had led to their success had been that there'd been someone on their side, an adult, who was giving them a message. At school they were being given the message that they were failing. Zoe Wanamaker said to me, her teachers thought she was away with the fairies, for instance. But there was someone in their lives who was saying, you can succeed, be that a parent or a teacher or an auntie or an uncle or whoever. And that made me think we can all be that person in the life of a young person with dyslexia. And the other thing which I thought was fantastic was this idea that learning is everywhere. It's not just at school. So, for instance, one of the people in the book is a writer called Nigel McCreary, who is the creator of New Tricks and Silent Witness, the television series. And he struggles still with reading and writing, but he said he learned about literature as a long-distance lorry driver when he was listening to the plays on Radio 4. So, that's just one of a huge number of examples. So that was in my book, Creative, Successful Dyslexic. And then I wrote a book of interviews, as you mentioned, with children and teenagers called Dyslexia is My Superpower Most of the Time. Yeah. And as you say, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot.
No. It's fascinating. Please continue. It's incredibly fascinating because what it allows the listeners and the viewers to understand is that the workings of how these were kind of created, and it's doing interviews and speaking to people and things like this, and I guess from a famous and a celebrity point of view is that we do, I guess, have this separation. We think, well, actually, they may be different. They may have had different help or anything. But when I'm listening to you and you're mentioning around, like when you mentioned about Zoe and things, it does take you back and you can relate to some of the struggles that they had. Absolutely. And the successes.
Yeah, and some of them do have obvious links in their background. I mean, Zoe Wanamaker's father was an incredibly famous man, Sam Wanamaker. Yeah. But this isn't just the stories of people who are well positioned, and I was very, very careful to do that. I wanted to include a cross section of people because it was so important that the reader could identify with them. So that was very important. No,
absolutely, and it's really fascinating when you say about and you're absolutely right that learning is everywhere. I can say from my own kind of schooling that I didn't, due to my undiagnosed dyslexia, I left school with no qualifications. But then I always say that I wake up like a sponge, just absorbing knowledge and information now, and almost feel like I've deprived away from the education. I was deprived the education of that learning. So that's why I've got this zest and, this hunger for continuous learning. And it was really, fascinating when you said, that as a truck driver, he learned, from listening to that certain channel and things. And I guess we do just think about learning as a book. It has to be, a book and then learn that and then a test and so on. But as you so rightly elaborated on, there's so many different ways that we can learn.
So many, absolutely. So I'm one of the women in the book. Her parents took her out of school for a while, and she said they went to Africa. She said, I learned the names of every buck in the bush. I love that phrase, every buck in the bush, because that's how she learned, And I bet she would have struggled to have learned that from a book.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So she was lucky, obviously, she got to go to Africa, but it's just one tiny example.
Absolutely.
And a great example, and this is really useful for parents, is Kelly Hoppen, the interior designer, who left school with no qualifications, as far as I remember. But from an incredibly young age, when her parents went out, she just rearranged their furniture at home because she felt it was all in the wrong place. And they would come home from wherever they'd been, and a wardrobe would have been moved, And that's how she learned. She doesn't have qualifications besides having done all that herself.
Yeah.
I think quite often when I met with parents while I was interviewing these children and teenagers, they might say to me quietly, oh, she doesn't have the attributes that come with dyslexia. She's not good at art. And I would say, look at what she is good at, maybe she's maybe she loves cooking, or, that's the thing to channel, because there's a career in that. Absolutely. As well as a hobby, so.
And I think that comes back to this I don't use terminology, stigma, or when people actually think of dyslexia and they say reading and writing, or you can be creative, you can get a job in art. Now, growing up, I wasn't diagnosed at the age of 36, so it was very late on, and I'm still trying to work out. I love art and I'm very creative, but I can't draw and paint. But you still have this bit inside thinking, well, maybe I should be able to paint. I should be able to do this. No. But and I guess that can cause that uncertainty of, okay, so I'm different in the sense of the way that I learn things. Yeah. Maybe I'm having dyslexia, and then there's an added pressure then of where do I fit in within the dyslexic world of because I need to be creative, and I'm sure that can, especially in the younger generation, can cause a little bit of kind of stress and anxiety around that, trying to identify themselves anyway, but identify themselves in the dyslexic world as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's partly why I call the book, my second book, Dyslexia is My Superpower, brackets most of the time, because in fact, both of those halves of the title came from different contributors to the book, so different children. And, that's me saying, not everyone is going to be Richard Branson. Yeah. Not everyone is going to be a famous artist. Even if you have a superpower, please don't feel you're failing if you don't achieve some dizzy heights that some stereotype is creating, because what you've got to be is the best you can be for yourself.
Now's probably a good time for you to grab a coffee and settle down for our third exclusive interview with Dr. Helen Ross. Helen Ross joins us to talk about the benefits of well-equipped teaching and how important it is to develop the right learning support skill sets. Helen is an SEN specialist, dyslexia expert, and member of the Board of Trustees at the British Dyslexia Association, and the owner and founder of Helen's Place, a hub of research and CPD support for schools, individuals, and families. And she's joining us today to explore the early educational experiences of dyslexia and just how managing expectations, dealing with pressure, and combating anxiety are a huge part of the early dyslexia journey.
Parents just want the best for their children.
Of course they do.
It is always, that's all they want is the child to get a good education and get into a good job, be safe and happy, and that's every parent's dream, to make sure that they can, they can help in any way, shape, or form. But sometimes those influences could not be in alignment with, because what the child wants necessarily, and then we have the different elements of well, if you get this job it pays well, or if you do this it pays well. So there's so many moving parts and what that.
The variables in a person's life is always n+1, isn't there? Ending current number. Like, I think it's value systems. You know, the educational value system at the moment is very white collar, professional, school, college, uni, that way. But there are the value systems, and you find if as an individual, the child and their family, if they all kind of chime with each other, and the parents are able to support. The parents are able to, not financially, but like culturally as well. If they can support their kids to do what they need to do to get where they want to be, that's great. I think a huge problem happens is when there's a clash and a create myself a habitus clash. I've written a paper on that, but like it's where things don't chime properly, and where there's a discord. And I think for kids with dyslexia, because there's already the discord of reading, writing, and illiteracy stuff can be quite difficult for them. There's a discord because they're going to find just accessing a more traditional academic pathway more difficult. But not to say they're not clever, it's far from it. It's just accessing it and kind of how to unravel and share and like unravel sounds negative, but like to share their knowledge.
Absolutely.
And I think I think the difficulty you've got is where things clash, and it's so much around supporting kids in the classroom is based on a relationship, and it's the links in a social network, sort of within a formal legal guideline network. And I think if one of the kind of elements, if they don't align, then that's where it can just go completely wrong. If they all work together, then this kid, the child in the centre of it, or the young person in the centre of it, they get a really good springboard. And I think in an ideal world, that's what you want. Because I don't know any teachers who want their kids to fail. Like, and if they do, why on earth are they teachers? Like, no, that's just nonsensical. But, and again, like you said, most parents want the best for their kids, even if they kind of don't get it right. That's not because there's not malice there, is there? No.
But again, sometimes it's a case of we take on everything from our parents. Sometimes our mannerisms, and again, I suggest what likes and dislikes are, and again, that side of it, and again, not letting your parents down, and I guess from someone who's dyslexic, having that kind of anxiety of what people want you to achieve and what you can achieve within the way that you're having to do work within the education system can be very challenging.
I remember seeing, it was my graduation weekend, so I graduated in 2005. That's amazing. And I remember sitting talking to my mum, because I had a job lined up in France to go off and be an engineer. It was everything on paper. I was like, I'm going to do this, and then I just went, Mum, I can't do it. And I remember sitting next to my mum outside the mapping building in Sheffield. It was the engineering building, and she's going, Mum, I just can't do it. And she told me that she'd had like a massive thing where she was going to be a teacher, and just went, ugh! And the journey, that couple of years between going, I'm going to be an engineer, to actually I'm going to train to teach and work in Barnsley, which is like, I loved it. I would live in Barnsley quite happily if it wasn't so cold and dark in winter. But it's that journey, even telling my parents I don't want to be an engineer, because my dad was a mechanical, he's a chartered engineer and he's amazing at what he does. Telling them was like, I'm really sorry, Mum and Dad. Yeah, properly. And then if you ever look at my LinkedIn, it's a bit bonkers. The journey is definitely not a linear journey. And I still now, I am 40 years old and I've got a kid of my own. I'm apparently on paper, I'm a proper grown-up, and I still worry that am I disappointing my parents? And my parents, they're not horrible. Like, they're amazing people. They're kind, they're gracious. They really support us for everything. But
do you think that's a neurodiverse thing?
Probably. I don't know.
That's a massive question. I know, but that because when you say you look at your LinkedIn and on paper you're a very well-educated adult.
I'm a proper grown-up.
A real grown-up.
Honest.
But you are, and you've achieved so many incredible things, and within your line of work, you help so many people with what you do.
And I'm squirming at what you're saying now.
I noticed this because you don't like any compliments or any facts. But
thank you. That's really kind.
But that element is, and I know I alluded to this before. Are you still trying to work out where that came from? Because don't get me wrong, I speak to so many,
of course you do.
So many people over the years, and that self-doubt kicks in more time. I spoke to more people around neurodiversity and dyslexia with that self-doubt. I'm not saying it's only
no, I understand.
But it seems to be heightened, and whether it was something some sort of and when I use the word trauma very lightly, in
I
the sense of in school, maybe, you know.
Something that's knocked you.
Yeah, something that's knocked you. You don't have to. But
No, I
try to search for this answer. It's just interesting to try and.
Well, I've been medicated for like anxiety and stuff, and it's all over the internet. It's no secret that my mental health is a bit wobbly because I have just like I squirm when you say nice things. Of course, I'm not an idiot. Of course, I'm clearly not. But like, you sort of squirm with this idea of I'm really, really pants at reading. I measure my own reading comp just because one of the tests I do for assessments, it's like what comes out, and it's like relative to the rest of me, it was really, really pants. Like, and so I was like, it explained a lot, but in explaining a lot, I was also incredibly aware of my like shortcomings, as it were. And I know rationally it's not shortcoming, it's my profile. But like, I look at people, and you put people on these pedestals, and you just think, oh my God, they're amazing. There are so many people who I think, just look at what they achieve. What am I doing? And I don't know where that comes from.
And that brings us to the end of this episode. But here's a little snippet of what's to come. In July, we'll be exploring the huge benefits of early intervention and early identification of dyslexia and literacy differences, and how this can change lives. We'll be looking at the impact of assessment on children and their families with Katrina Cochran, and digging into all things early intervention with Becky Hawes. We'll be covering inclusivity and some of the stereotypes that we might encounter around dyslexia and literacy differences. We'll also be taking a deep dive into quality-first teaching and best practice when supporting dyslexia in the classroom. We'll also be looking more closely about the experiences of women who have dyslexia and why these narratives need to have more critical attention paid to them when it comes to fostering a community that recognizes the diversities and experience within the dyslexia landscape. We'll be asking Sue Floor with MBE of the British Dyslexia Association just how it is that imposter syndrome can have such a powerful impact on people with dyslexia and the ways that they live and work. You can also look forward to our exclusive interview with Dr. Jenna Kenyani, an equality, diversity, inclusive, and well-being advisor for the Faculty of Health and Life Sciences at the University of Liverpool, about how dyslexia and mental health are interlinked, as well as focusing on how her work to improve research culture is designed to make the research and doctoral space a more inclusive, diverse, and accessible place for everybody. Thank you once again so much for watching. If you'd like to learn more, please feel free to click this link here and view episode 15. You just watched episode 16, and yes, we come out with a brand new episode every single month. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you there.